So let's get to it, everyone. There are now reports and strong indication that Tongshan Fusheng Industrial Investment Company Limited, the Chinese firm that got a court injunction to ground 3 presidential jets belonging to the federal government of Nigeria and Europe, has initiated plans to seize other Nigerian assets in the United Kingdom and the US and about 6 other countries globally. The company is being reported to have instituted legal proceedings in about 8 jurisdictions globally regarding this dispute between the Ogun State government and that firm. Meanwhile, the federal government says legal and diplomatic efforts are ongoing to recover some seized presidential jets. Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, today in a statement through his spokesperson, Kamarudin Ogundele, the AGF described as inappropriate court orders against 3 presidential aircraft undergoing routine maintenance in France. He said that the federal government became aware of the interim attachment of the aircraft on Wednesday, the 14th of August, 2024. Yesterday, we were getting reactions from the presidency, from Ogun State government. The dimension to these is huge. The Ogun State government is saying, look, this happened about 12 years ago between the past government and the Chinese firm. And that the Chinese firm had only put up a perimeter fencing around the proposed site of the property. Now, Nigeria is at the risk of losing assets. And of course, the federal government is now in the mix of all things and somewhat a security in the whole business deal that has gone south. How do we get out of this quagmire? The Ogun State government has been making the explanation, but it says, look, it's looking into a proper negotiation and a matter for them to be able to speak with the Chinese firm to resolve this amicably. And of course, you know, in all of this, we all do understand that there was an arbitration ab initio, which didn't go well because the position at the end of the arbitration did not go down well with Ogun State government. Now, Nigeria, as a federation, is in the mix of things and is about to lose assets that could embarrass the nation. Let's get some perspective to someone who is in the know. Is very used to international dimension of this kind of legal tussle. Is Adebayo, Prince Adebayo, the SDP presidential candidate in the 2023 election. Aside all of these politics, his main business is representing interest in this kind of dispute, and of course, a solicitor who is involved in international and global business engagement. Thank you so much, Mr. Adebayo, for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good to see you. God bless Nigeria.
Now, my first question would be, I don't know. I can't hear Mr. Adebayo. If you can, my producer can get me the audio.
Okay.
My first question would be, where do you think things went wrong? Nigerians may not be belabored by the whole gamut of story in the whole issue that went wrong. But if you can summarize where you think things may have gone wrong. Usually we see state government engaging firms internationally to do investments in Nigeria. Or from where you are sitting, where did you think things went wrong?
Well, things actually went wrong when the company and the state government, they were supposed to be partners, became opponents, and they started litigating. You recall that normally the country is looking for investment, and they look for investment locally, look for investment internationally. I believe even on your channel, you will see that many times governors come to you to do show and tell, where you will see some foreigners enter the government office and they will say, oh, we are our partners, we are trying to do this business or the other. And sometimes these businesses or projects outlast the tenure of the incumbent governor. And the successor might not understand the seriousness of the understanding. I might just come and say, well, we terminate the contract or we don't want you here anymore. But internationally, when you engage investors and you sign these contracts, you're not only signing the commercial contract, you're also signing treaties in some situations where if there is a dispute between the government and the investor may decide to sue on their own in any regular court. They can go into arbitration. They can also go into what we call state treaty arbitration, whereby if you come from Nigeria and you're doing business in China, there is an agreement internationally to which China is a signatory and Nigeria is a signatory, where they say if any of our citizens is doing business in the other country, then they can do arbitration using the mechanism of the treaty. Now, I don't want to sound too technical, but the issue we need to understand is that, one, it is not originally a federal government obligation. It is an obligation of Ogun State. However, under public international law, subdivisions, subsidiaries, subnationals are not recognized internationally. So if a state out of the 36 states in Nigeria, if any of them has an international obligation, Nigeria will be the one to hold to account. So that is why the federal government is implicated in the matter. And we also need to know that it was not a loan. It's not as if Nigeria took a loan and used any of these national assets as collateral. No, it was a business that was supposed to be done between Ogun State government and the Chinese private firm. And the Chinese private firm has gone to arbitration to allege that Ogun State breached the contract by stopping them from making progress, and they have suffered losses. And both parties went to arbitration. So the second stage where it went wrong is that when you go for arbitration and the arbitration award is against you, you should try, for the sake of your reputation, to try to pay. But on many occasions, or some occasions, the state entity involved may be advised by lawyers that the arbitrators made a mistake, that the arbitrators misconducted themselves, that they went outside their jurisdiction. So some of these things may go into litigation. And sometimes it's just lack of political will to deal with the issue, and they are dealing with it cavalierly or casually. But what I also say, the next stage is that the attachment, interim attachment of the presidential jet does not mean that the jets have been lost. Because under international law, assets of the federal government used by the government for diplomacy and monies kept in our central bank used for central banking activities are immune. No court at any time can attach them. And I want us to understand that clearly. So, but when you go to court for an interim order, typically only one side is heard. So there will be, the court has not heard from Nigeria's side. So the Chinese company going to the court to say, these are aircraft, like any other aircraft. They are for maintenance in France. And any person, whether you're a government or not, can bring your aircraft for maintenance to seize the aircraft. So the court might be inclined to just put a temporary seizure and serve notice on Nigeria to come and appear. I believe that as the law stands, once Nigeria appears there and can demonstrate, especially with the assistance of the foreign ministry of the French government, that these are diplomatic assets, the court will lift the decision.
All right.
It does not mean that you should not settle with your counterparty. It doesn't mean that you should not pay your judgment debt when you have gotten finality in litigation. But typically, you do not attach monies or assets belonging to central banks, and you do not attach assets or money or property belonging to sovereign. And Nigeria is a sovereign, headed by a president who is using that plane for diplomacy.
So let's get it clear. For a lot of people who are watching tonight and be thinking that arbitration, yes, of course, where two parties agree that let somebody come in between us and settle this dispute for us without having to go to court, but whatever decision that is made in that process is binding on both parties. But it's also good to establish the fact that this deal came up in 2007. And by 2007, that was when the deal came out first. 2015, it went into arbitration. The arbitration was concluded in 2016. $60 million was slammed on the federal government, which was a party to it. There are those who will say, Prince Adebayo, and no matter what the case may be, although the Ogun State government is saying, look, this deal was supposed to develop a free trade zone in Ogun State, but they only built a perimeter fence. Now they are talking about $60 million as of 2016 when the arbitration was concluded, and they thought it was unfair. Anybody who is familiar with this kind of international dealings will say, no matter what, as a tortuous legal implication, it means that something will have to part. Those who are saying that we have been injured by the manner in which you related with us, there are those who will say Nigeria will still lose at the end of the day or pay something. At the end of the day, what do you think is the worst case scenario for Nigeria in this particular case?
Well, the worst case scenario is that Nigeria will pay the arbitration award or a portion of it. As lawyers, it's very difficult to second guess when you are not the one handling the matter, because you will assume that the lawyers to the federal government, now that they became an arbitration internationally, and the lawyers to the Ogun State government will know enough law to advise them. But from my experience, because the position where the Chinese company is now, I have been in that position against the Attorney General of Nigeria on many occasions. I've threatened to seize the asset before. In fact, in the past, I have seized the asset of this same government before in London. So, and I see the experience. What I can say generally, if I were to advise the government as a citizen, is that, one, try to be careful regarding your commercial reputation, because you are running a neoliberal government, and most of your macroeconomic policies is dependent on attracting foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. And in that kind of situation, you don't want to be seen as a tough cookie, difficult people to do business with. But Nigeria has very good lawyers. Nigeria is highly litigious. And it is not today. For many years, there's a case where Lord Denny of England passed some negative comments about Nigeria and our attitude towards meeting our obligation. So what I'm saying generally is that Nigeria is known to be a tough customer. When they owe you, you don't want to pay. They want to argue it to the end. On many occasions, they get it right. Like in the case of P&ID, it will have been a disservice to the country to pay all that humongous amount of money without scrutiny. So that scrutiny saved the country massive income, saved the country a lot of our wealth, and saved millions of people from going to poverty or having to pay that about $13 billion, which we do not have. But occasionally, when you also challenge other ones, you get into a tough situation. But it's an embarrassment that is temporary. I believe that in the next proceeding following this aircraft to be released. That doesn't mean that releasing the aircraft will extinguish the obligation to pay any judgment debt. No, it means that at least Nigeria can breathe easy, and then they can now focus on how to negotiate. Additional point I will make is that the Attorney General should be careful in advising the state attorneys general that if you are entering any obligation with international people, sometimes even with Nigerians, if you agree to arbitration, you should be careful to realize the implication. Because I think that the Attorney General of Nigeria should have advised Ogun State one way or the other on how to resolve this matter, because Ogun State, or your state, Kano State, Sokoto, whatever, all these 36 states, none of them is known in the international arena. They just know that Nigeria has done this, even though the federal government may not be involved in it. So we want to have a system whereby we are able to convince the international community that we are serious people. One governor doesn't come and sign, and then another governor comes, whether because of politics or other problems not associated with the investor, will cancel the investment. It happens. Many Nigerians have lost assets, and many international people have lost assets. I myself have been a victim of it on many occasions. You bring investors to the country, they are doing well, they are being applauded. Then the next government comes, either due to inattention or politics or just malice or mischief. Then they throw the people out, and then trouble starts. Remember, global state.
Yeah.
We were brought by Obasanjo, and Yar'Adua came and threw them out, and we had to pay a lot of money when President Buhari was there. That is the lesson to learn. And if you have 1 more minute, I will tell you that the most important lesson to learn is to make our courts to be fair and respected, so that investors, partners can agree to do their litigation in Nigeria. The tendency is that people just believe that the Nigeria court system is too slow, and the system is not going to give you justice, and everybody insists on having international arbitration clauses in the agreement. That is making us lose money, lose reputation, and lose an opportunity to resolve issues domestically.
All right. If you look at the statement released by the Ogun State government, you will see the kind of frustration that parties face in a dispute like this when it comes to a legal conundrum of this nature. And you will see that they allege that the Chinese company is being evasive. And now, the other aspect to it is the multi-jurisdiction that has come into play. Now, the evasiveness of this, as alleged by the Ogun State government on one hand, and the fact that Nigeria may not be fighting this battle in multiple jurisdictions because they have threatened that there is a possibility that they will go after Nigeria's assets in different countries. We saw what happened in France. They said they will go to places like the UK and some other clients, about 8 of them. How difficult do you think this could pose, legally speaking, for Ogun State on one hand and federal government that might be receiving the pain of the beating in this dispute?
For Ogun State, Nigeria is the father, Nigeria is the guarantor. So internationally, nobody knows Ogun State. I don't think has any asset internationally that can be exposed. So Ogun State is maximum pain for Ogun State is the Attorney General may insist that I'm going to deduct the money from your allocation that is at the FAC. That's it. But these are pressure tactics. So it doesn't mean that going to UK, going to America, go everywhere is going to get you the assets, because the laws are very clear. It's very difficult to attach assets of a sovereign in the UK. Even in the US, the judgment they got at the Court of Appeal, I've got similar judgment many times in the past, just recognizes the fact that Nigeria agreed not to assert immunity when you are enforcing. But particular assets do not lose their immune status just because of that. But they are putting pressure. They are trying to embarrass Nigeria everywhere. Their aim is not necessarily that they will keep these assets. It's that Nigeria will be in the negative news all the time. So you are raising bonds, you are talking to investors, you are going everywhere. Everybody will be asking you about your debt. And if you are being rated globally, some of the rating agencies will consider it. If these are pressure tactics, Nigeria is a very difficult country to recover from. I've been in litigation before where we spent $60 million in litigation just to recover from Nigeria, and it took years. So Nigeria is very tough. I've tried to recover against other countries. Once you make a little effort here and there, they will call you, they will negotiate, but Nigeria is a very tough customer internationally. And if maybe the lawyers in the Ministry of Justice will be happy to say, well, people will think twice before they sue Nigeria. But if you want to do business, you want to be in Singapore, you want to be like Switzerland, you want to be like France, you want to be like other countries, you want to be like Dubai, or UAE, where people carry business and go to, then you don't want to be seen just as a guy who is tough, who will argue and litigate and be evasive to the end. As the governor said, the governor is not a lawyer and is not speaking the capacity of a lawyer. I think what he should be doing is to be speaking that Ogun State is good for business, to talk about other businesses in Ogun State that have been done well, that not into litigation, not to be arguing legalistic. That's for a lawyer to go and tell the court in Paris. But you must continue to assure other investors, because you're not dealing only with this investor. I'm a lawyer. I'm a Nigerian. I want to be a Nigerian president. I'm loyal to the country. I'm patriotic. But as a professional, if an international business asks me where they should take their business to, and I'm advising them on Nigeria, I'm bound by professional ethics to advise them that Nigeria is a very difficult country and that you may not pay. Or if you get arbitration against them, they may not pay you. They may make trouble with you. That's part of what you need to advise them. And you don't want that to be part of your profile.
All right.
I am not saying that you should not defend the country, that you should make sure that you don't lose your reputation. But overall, there's no need to panic. This is what happens regularly. What the judgment creditor is trying to do is to put you under pressure in many countries. They may not recover anything from all those countries, but they are crying for attention. They are saying, please pay attention. And lastly, if you remember that China is a very strong country, you also don't want to offend a country that is your partner on many fronts by maltreating their citizens, criminalizing them, or embarrassing them. So we should resolve it amicably.
Prince Adebayo has got a lot of experience in this kind of disputes internationally, and that's why we've invited him to speak on this and share his perspectives. Thank you so much for your time tonight. He's a lawyer and the presidential candidate of the
Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
Thank you so much indeed in the 2023 election. Thank you so much indeed.